Is it news?
Corleone is a man who insists on hearing bad news immediately.
Or just noise?
Are you going to act like this is news?
Just noise. This is noise.
Let's separate the impactful from the insignificant with one simple question. News or noise?
All right, let's do it. Jumping right in here, Michael. Speculative reports from the Boston Globe and writer Ben Volin this week say Patriots head coach Bill Belichick could be coaching for his job, particularly this week in Germany if they come back with a 2-8 record and lose to the Colts. Belichick was asked as much multiple times by reporters this week if he believes that's the case or if he was given any assurances from owner Robert Kraft that he wouldn't be replaced during the season. His response, as Belichick as ever. Take a listen.
Yeah, my focus is on get ready for the Colts.
Do you personally believe that you could be coaching for your job this week against the Colts?
I'm going to control it. I can control them to get ready for the Colts.
And yep, that is very, very Belichickian answer. So news or noise, Michael? Belichick coaching for his job in Germany this week.
Well, they've made it news. There's no question about it. I mean, for a man who's won 6 Super Bowls, he's under a hotter seat than Ron Rivera is. And Matt Eberflus, we just did a whole segment on the Bears. We never brought up Eberflus being on the hot seat or Ryan Poles, but yet we're going to talk about a guy who's won 6 Super Bowls. I think it is news. Now, I think no one's directly contacted Robert Kraft, who's the only man who really knows whether this is news or noise. And the fact is will Kraft make a decision during the season? I mean, my question is, and I said this on the podcast, Kraft really has one fundamental question to ask, is does he still believe in Bill? And if he doesn't, does it matter when he makes the change? Or if he does, he needs to come out and say that. I mean, and so that'll be the bye week. And there's a lot of things that typically get cleared up in the bye. Usually you go and spend time with everybody in the organization on the bye week because you have more time. The players aren't around. You're not getting ready for the next opponent. So we shall see. I think you have to consider this news because it just won't go away. The story doesn't go. And I've been around the league long enough to know that this is coming from somewhere. Right. Someone's wanting to control this narrative.
Right. And there was also that video that kind of made the rounds this week of Kraft talking to his son, Jonathan, and you overhear him say, we're just not good enough right now. And obviously the numbers indicate as much too. The negative 93 points differential, second worst in the NFL right now, averaging 15 points per game. Turnover differential, fourth worst in the league. They can't run the football. Penalties, they're bottom 8 as well. So a lot of things have added up. But for one of the greatest coaches, and certainly the greatest of my lifetime, to be fired mid-season, that boiling point must be much higher than anyone really, really recognizes for something like that to happen and for this to be a week where he's, quote, coaching for his job.
Well, unless Mr. Kraft wants to try to give somebody an opportunity to see. You remember, he redid Mayo's contract last offseason and kept him, and so he could easily say, okay, look, why wait to the end of the year and part ways? Let me give Mayo a tryout and see what he can do for the team. I think what he has to do is a little bit what Mark Davis did. You have to look at your team and say, are they giving it everything they have? And the answer Mark Davis came up with was a resounding no. And so he wanted to make that decision before the Bears. I mean, they were going back to Chicago at 3-3, and they wanted to make the move then. And they waited till after the Bear game, until the Detroit game. After the Bear game, they wanted to make the move. And so I think some of the players convinced him not to wait for the Lions game. Now, I don't think Kraft's talking to that many players, but if he decides it's better off to just give Mayo an opportunity, I don't know if you could argue that, why does he have to wait to the end of the year to do that?
And the New England Patriots are an underdog in this game, getting 2 points against the Colts coming up in Germany. So we'll see what happens during the bye week and if Gerard Mayo ends up being the interim guy for the final 7 games of the season. Pretty crazy to think about. Let's keep it going with different headlines around the NFL, Michael. After missing the required number of games with a hamstring injury, Viking star wide receiver Justin Jefferson has officially been designated to return. But while many hoped Jefferson would be ready to go this week, Kevin O'Connell says it's, quote, a little aggressive to expect the wide receiver to play against the Saints. He's taken it day by day from here on out. News or noise, should Vikings fans be worried Jefferson still needs more time?
Well, I mean, I think he probably does. He does need more time. But I think if you're a Viking fan, what the news really is how well your defense has played over the last 6 weeks. I mean, when you take into account their first win in Carolina, how well they played defensively, to each of the last game against the Falcons, how well they played. They've won 5 of 6. The only loss came against the Chiefs. And really, there's only been 2 teams that have scored points on them. The Chiefs scored 27, Atlanta scored 28. They've played really good. For a lot of players that you don't even know who's on their team, they've done a great job. They've been able to kind of keep themselves in the game. And one of the things that they have to be really careful of moving forward is they're fumbling, right? Minnesota has fumbled 17 times already this year. They've lost 12. And their starting quarterback, Joshua Dobbs, is a fumbler. He's fumbled 11 times all season with the Cardinals, and he fumbled 3 times in his debut. So they if they're going to go back to where they started the season, losing to Tampa, losing to Philly, losing to the Chargers, because they fumbled, they got to protect themselves with Dobbs.
Yeah, got to hold on to the football. Getting 3 points this week against the New Orleans Saints. Now, the San Francisco 49ers, Michael, obviously trying to work themselves out of what's been a funk. They want to get back to the team that started the season 5-0, and the offense can't take all of the blame. We've talked about that a lot on this show. San Francisco's defense the first 5 weeks, first in the NFL in points allowed per game, 3rd in yards allowed, 5th in defensive expected points added, and 6th in takeaways. Over the last 3 prior to the bye, dropped to 24th, 30th, 31st, and tied for 13th in those categories respectively. Now, they've elected to move defensive coordinator Steve Wilks from the booth down to the sideline. News or noise, will Wilks on the sideline make a difference?
I think it will. I think that's news. And I don't think it's news. I think he needs to get his fingers into the pie. It's tough to be able to get spark and get the players to play at a higher level than when you're up in the box, right? It's easier to see the game from up there, but it's more to be able to motivate the team from down there. And look, they've given up a ton of yards in the last 2 weeks. I mean, whether it's Minnesota or Cincinnati, even Cleveland with P.J. Wright, at quarterback. It wasn't very good either. They got 174 yards, 160 yards running on them. Teams have run the football on them. I fully expect the Niners to be back and play better defensive. I think they'll go back to their original scheme. I think they'll try to play less man coverage. I think they'll play more zone. I think they'll be back to where they were with DeMeco Ryans and not try to get involved in a man game and rely on their 4-man pressure to get there. And I think that's one of the things they have going for them. Remember this, Trevor Lawrence, they're playing in Jacksonville this week. Lawrence is a better road quarterback than at home. He's a better road quarterback than at home. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. And if he has a hard time, if you put pressure on him, and this is what the Niners have to do.
And for the 49ers, I think that their bye came at a perfect time, working for them to get healthy. Meanwhile, the Jags, they're on this 5-game win and cover streak. You kind of want to keep that train moving. So maybe the bye coming at a bad time for a team like Jacksonville as well. Okay, Kyler Murray expected to start for the Arizona Cardinals this week against the Falcons. And over his career, Murray's legs have been pretty much just as important as his arm has been to this point. Coming off of the ACL injury, offensive coordinator Drew Petzing was asked if there was a limit going to be placed on utilizing Murray in the run game. Here's Petzing's response.
I would ultimately no. He's healthy. He's ready to go. We're going to put him in a position to be successful. I think that's always the nature when you have a franchise quarterback, and you see that around the league when they are very mobile. There's an injury risk that's associated with that. So we have to manage that, as all teams with elite quarterbacks do. But he's going to do what puts us in the best position to win the game.
News or noise, they expect Murray to run like he normally does.
I think that's news, but I don't expect him to run like he typically always does. Last year, he had 67 rushing attempts. The year before, in 14 games, he had 88. So he's had 381 rushing attempts in his career over 4 years. The only year that he ran the ball quite a bit was in 20, when he had 133 rushing attempts for almost 1,000 yards. He had 819 yards that year. So I think, to me, and he averaged 6.2 yards a carry. I don't see that happening. I don't see that. I think you're going to see him cut back down. I think, typically what you'll see is 6 rushes, 5 rushes, none of them designed, all of them on the ad-lib nature. And I think that's the way he's got to approach it. You've got to do a good job of rushing the pocket on this player, right? I mean, let's be honest here. Last year he missed 6 games. The year before that he missed 3 games. So the last 2 years he's missed some games because of injuries, and they've got to do a better job of protecting him, and he's got to protect himself like Lamar does. Lamar doesn't take many hits. I mean, the guy that you really want to watch that avoids hits like crazy is Tyreek Hill. Never takes a direct hit.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.